Hi, this is Brian from the Full Recovery Wellness Center. Welcome. Today I'd like to talk about an experience I had a few years ago, and how life kind of takes us in different directions. I used to think, why is this happening to me, and what did I do to deserve this? And now I look for the lesson whenever adversity comes my way. The situation was this: I was in between careers, and I didn't know which direction I was going to go in. I had an idea of which way I was going to go. My will, not God's will. My will is what I was really interested in at the time. I was in a corporate environment. I was like a rocket ship. Everything I did, I got sober. Then I started working my way through this place, and I started getting more money and more promotions, and I had all that. I was feeling really good. Man, I'm pretty hot stuff. Look how good I am, And life has a way of sending us in the way it wants to go rather than the way I wanted to go. My higher power was directing, and I didn't understand it at the time. And my situation was this: I wound up losing the job. I wound up in financial difficulties after being sober for quite some time. And I realized how close I was now to a drink and a drug, because I wasn't going to meetings like I should have. I kind of drifted away. I kind of lost my network of recovery people that I talked to on a regular basis because I was running the show. During this time, I wound up, because of a bad injury I received years earlier, I broke my back in a motorcycle accident, and it never really healed properly. So at the same time I'm losing my career, and I'm having financial difficulties, and I'm drifting away from my sober network, I blow my back out, and I wound up hospitalized. I'm in the hospital for over a month. I was paralyzed in my legs. I couldn't walk. My right leg, I didn't move for 6 months. I couldn't even get into a car. It was really a nightmare. And then during that time, when I'm bedridden, my son and I had really prepaid to go on a trip of a lifetime down the Grand Canyon. We were going to go whitewater rafting. So to add insult to injury, the company that I had signed on with, the guide company, kept my money, wouldn't give me a refund. So I'm facing financial, career, family. My father-in-law was dying of Alzheimer's. It was just one of those nightmare moments when we've all had them. It's just life on life's terms, It's funny, the Romans had a saying, amor fati, the virtue of loving one's own fate. Understanding that whatever's happening to you, nothing human is alien to any of us. I could have any experience that anybody else has, but of course, being human and having an ego, I figured I'd get a free pass. But I wound up one of those moments when everything was down, and there was a good chance I wasn't going to regain any of the movement in my leg. So being a good addict and alcoholic, I figured, wrong guy. I fought like crazy. I got up. I did everything the doctors told me to do, and a full year goes around, and I'm up and I'm out of bed. And I'm thinking, well, God, what am I going to do now for a career? What am I going to do with my life? This other job has come to an end. I had no direction. But I did know one thing. I was going to go back down the whitewater trip through the Grand Canyon with my son. So even against doctor's orders, I said, I'm going to go do this. So what happened was this. We fly out, we land in Vegas, right? When we hit the airport, we're there walking around. I see this big guy walking around the airport, and he's blind. He's 100% blind. He can't see anything, and he's struggling. So just being, a regular person, I walk up, you need a hand, pal? So he says, sure, mate. And it winds up I say, oh, you're from Australia? He goes, yeah, sure, I'm from Australia. So I help him on his way. We part, we say goodbye, and he moves down the road. The next day, we wake up, we're gonna get on a little puddle jumper plane, we're gonna fly to the north rim of the Grand Canyon, my son and I, to go on our whitewater rafting trip. I get on the plane, who's sitting in the chair next to me but the blind guy? I'm like, what are you doing here? He goes, hey mate, I'm going whitewater rafting down the Grand Canyon. I'm like, who is this guy? Well, who are you with? He goes, I'm by myself, mate, traveling the world. So this guy's definitely got my curiosity. And I'm like, well, what's your name? He says, James. I was like, okay. James, I'm Brian, this is Rory, my son, and we decided to pal around together. So we go up there, we land on the north rim of the canyon on this 6 million acre ranch, and we're riding horses, and James is riding with us, and we're riding motorcycles, and I got him on the back of one, and we're doing all this crazy stuff. And the next morning we go down and they helicopter us into the canyon. So we get on this boat, and it's kind of like a funny situation because you're on a boat with a few strangers and nobody, and you have nothing but time on your hands, and you're going through this mystical place, the Grand Canyon. It is so breathtaking, and it's some of the world's biggest Class 5 rapids and some of the most placid areas of water you'll ever see. So as we're going, I'm barely able to hang on. My son, he's all jacked up, and he's a college-age kid, and he's barely able to hang on to this raft, going through these rapids, going crazy. And as James is just laughing and having a blast, I'm like, who is this guy? You know, who? So as we get to know each other, you know, going down there, he started to divulge his story. So James tells me that he went blind at 16. He says his father was an eye doctor, an eye surgeon, I believe, in Australia. And he started getting a degenerative eye disease, and his own father couldn't even help him. And he said by the time he was like 15, 16, he was totally blind. And I was like, oh my God, what a horror. You know, and he says to me, he says, well, it was terrible. I went into a deep depression. I'm like, well, who wouldn't? You know what I mean? And I'm sitting there thinking like, here I'm drinking and drugging over my problems as a young man. That's a problem. That's a challenge. My stuff is nothing compared to this. So he says after a couple of weeks, maybe a month of laying in bed and feeling sorry for himself, one day his father walks in his room and rips the covers off the bed and says, get up, get out of bed. And he picked him up and says, go outside. He goes, you might as well figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life and what you're good at. You're going to be blind a long time, so you might as well have a life. You better figure something out. He says it was horrible. He pushed me outside. He goes, he tried getting me to play soccer. I can't see the ball. He says, he tries to get me to run. I keep falling. He goes, all these things keep happening, but he's not going to let me lay down and feel sorry for myself. He goes, eventually I realized I was good at swimming. I like swimming. As James starts telling me his story, it winds up, he's the first blind man, I'm getting chills telling you this, he's the first blind man to swim the English Channel. He's the first blind man to swim around the island of Manhattan. He holds over 250 endurance records for swimming, both blind and non-blind. He's one of the world's greatest swimmers. He goes through this whole deal. And James is such an incredible man. He's wearing a camera as we're going down through the Grand Canyon. And I'm like, what are you wearing a camera for? You can't see anything. He says, this way, you know, if you say like, Brian, you know, tell me there's a mesa at 2 o'clock, he would turn to 2 o'clock and snap a picture. I said, well, why? He says, this way I can show my friends where I've been, my travels. He worked a full-time job. He was paying for his own trip. He's the most incredible human being I've ever met in my life. And I'm saying this to you because I'm thinking back, you know, about myself. I was feeling sorry for myself. I was laid up for a year. I had financial difficulties. I lost my money on the first trip, you know, but that was God working in my life, because had I not had that experience, I would have missed the opportunity to meet James. And James has changed my life. A lot of times when I feel like life is getting tough and it's not treating me fair, I remember James. And I remember that, you know, life isn't supposed to be fair. We got to all play the hand we're dealt. James is playing his hand. He's living his life to the fullest. He made a decision. You know, you as an alcoholic and an addict, I'd like you to think about this. The next time you think getting sober is tough or life's not treating you fair, think about James's father, and I'll take a little poetic license with this. You're going to be an addict and an alcoholic a long time. You might as well figure out what you like to do and what you want to do with the rest of your life. Just keep pushing forward. It's funny, when I got back from that trip, I was all pumped up. I spent a week in the Grand Canyon in this spectacular setting, physical, outdoors, camping, meeting James, all this stuff. I get off the plane and a business deal I was working on had collapsed in my absence. And I started losing my temper and I started losing my focus and I started yelling at my attorney. And you know what my son did? He says, at least you can see. Oh yeah, gratitude. I would put that right in perspective. What do I have to complain about? I'm here for a short time on this planet. You are too. I plan on sucking up all the juice I can. I don't want to waste any time high on alcohol or drugs. I want to enjoy every day that God has given me. This is Brian McAllister from the Full Recovery Wellness Center saying, don't drink, go to meetings, and change.